And we head now to Ukraine, where that country's president is once again asking for help from NATO and pressuring the alliance to become one of its permanent members. Zelenskyy joining European leaders in Moldova ahead of an expected counteroffensive against Russia's invasion. We're joined now by retired U.S. Army Major General William Inyard. Thank you so much for being here. So do you see a situation where NATO would admit Ukraine into the alliance?
Well, hello, Kelly. It appears to me that Ukraine is a de facto member of NATO already. NATO is currently supplying weapons, ammunition, and training. In fact, NATO's been providing training to Ukraine since the late 1990s. I was there almost 20 years ago, back in 2005, on a 22 NATO nation training session with the Ukrainians. And in 2008, NATO agreed to provide membership to Ukraine, but they didn't provide a timeline. And it's interesting, the NATO Secretary General just recently stated once again that all of the NATO members agree that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance, just didn't give a timeline for it. The Lithuanian foreign minister stated that Ukraine has had 2 invasions since in the last 14 years, since NATO promised to let them in. So the nations that directly border Russia and Ukraine, the Baltics, Poland, are far more anxious for Ukraine to become a member of NATO than is the U.S. or Germany. That's because those nations have long suffered from the dominance of Russia and formerly the Soviet Union.
Well, that's a great point, and I think that's an interesting perspective. So would Ukraine joining NATO mean anything different for Americans?
Well, I think that's one of the main reasons that the U.S. has got its current policy, and that is that we're providing weapons and economic aid for Ukraine, but we're slow rolling NATO membership. The NATO treaty says that an attack on one is an attack on all. And Ukraine, of course, has been attacked by Russia. So Ukrainian membership would mean U.S. security guarantees, which means U.S. troops. So I don't think it's very likely that we would approve NATO membership as long as the war is ongoing. And that's pretty much Germany's position. So with the U.S. and Germany aligned there, that's going to continue to be slow rolled until this war comes to a conclusion.
And I know you know this, earlier this week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Sweden to join the alliance. And back in April, Finland became a member. So what are the benefits to strengthen NATO?
Well, I think the benefits to strengthening NATO, we as a nation have fought every war since World War I with allies. And an alliance is, in today's world, really the only way that you could successfully conclude any major war. So and as long as there's peace in Europe, there's peace worldwide, in that there's not a world war going on. There are lots of little brush fire wars, but not a major war. So we absolutely want to ensure peace in Europe, and we want to see that Europe maintains the strong and vibrant democracies that they have developed since World War II, and certainly have been allied with us in many of our expeditions.
Yeah, and to your point, it's a bit concerning to suggest, but is there a risk of World War III with Putin if Ukraine is admitted?
Well, I'm sure that Putin and the Russian ultranationalists are going to view this as an existential threat. Because of as you pointed out, it puts NATO directly on Russia's border. But we've already seen an increase in Russia's border with NATO with the admission of Finland. I think had Putin successfully conquered Ukraine, that would have put us in a much closer position to World War III than admitting NATO. A successful invasion by Putin would have emboldened him, and he would have viewed NATO and the U.S. as a paper tiger, which would have encouraged further aggression on his part. Now that we've seen all these exposed weaknesses of the Russian military, I don't think that Putin or the Russian general staff is particularly anxious to start World War III. And of course, the use of nuclear weapons would result in mutually assured destruction. So that's not a weapon system that's going to be lightly used. All in all, this unwarranted aggression by Putin has been a strategic disaster for him and for Russia. And I think he realizes that any further aggression would simply compound the disaster.
That makes sense. Retired Major General William Inyard, thank you as always for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you today, Kelly.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.